So, welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Chad Nance. He is a documentary filmmaker, journalist, and actor, among other things. Co-creator of the Camel City Dispatch, and that's out of Winston-Salem, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a few of his projects you may have heard of are The Devil You Know, Life in the Sacrifice Zone, and the upcoming Hometown America. My first question, I think you're going to get a kick out of this. I was thinking about what's a good softball one. It's a good icebreaker
I
here.
like those are my favorite, man.
Here you go. And oh man, you're going to love this. So, and this is half serious too. So, are the graduates to do the straight face, are the graduates of the University of North Carolina School of the Arts taking over the entertainment industry?
You've been talking to Angel. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, in pockets, man. I mean, you got and these guys weren't necessarily out of our crew, but you got, the new Captain America is a UNCSA guy. The new villain, the main villain in the Marvel universe is an NCSA guy, Jonathan Majors. Yeah, we're doing our thing. I think
And God, there was just a few other people. I was watching something a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I think I've seen that guy before.
Yeah, those were our people. Those we all were in school together. They all are down in Charleston, South Carolina, with the Rough House Company, which is their company that is really populated with people from School of the Arts. And they've done everything from the A24 stuff, like the Halloween films that still got one coming. Halloween Ends is coming in October, and then I think one of the better comedy shows on television, that and What We Do with in the Shadows, is Righteous Gemstones, is just brilliant.
Oh, that show is so good. Well, let me dig into your background here a little bit because I want to make sure that I got this right because I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I knew this about you. So, what did you glean from Sylvester Stallone while working on Daylight and Copland?
Oh, so
or did you even have any interaction with him at all?
Yeah, actually, so you are friends with a friend that a guy I went to school with, Angel Perales.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, the legendary Turk. Yeah. He's not a Turk, but the way he got his name.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
But if you met the guy,
yeah.
No, in film school at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, one of my roommates and one of my good friends was Sylvester Stallone's son, Sage.
Oh, okay.
Who's no longer with us.
Right.
But he and I were good buddies, and I ended up going. His dad hired me to go to work on several of the films, and the ones I worked on were Daylight and Copland, were the main ones I worked on. So I was able to. I mean, I was around. It was I was in the entourage, as it were, and did learn a lot. I mean, Rob Cohen was directing that movie, the guy that went on to do Fast and Furious and kind of found that franchise. He had also been producer on Car Wash, so it's like this long, history of films. There was a lot of people around. The director of photography was David Igby, the guy who was the DP on the original Mad Max film.
Wow.
And had done other famous films from out of Australia, like The Man from Snowy River, stuff like that. So Igby and those guys were the special effects guy on that film was Kit West. It was like this weird thing, and Kit West is famous as being
right.
Spielberg's guy. So there's this weird confluence of it was legendary craftspeople. It wasn't just Stallone was in the movie, and Amy Brennan before Heat, and although she's like a legend, man, Amy's she's in that new show Old Man with Jeff Bridges, and Amy's like, it's like she's been in with like the major leading men of the day, from Stallone all the way to Bridges. I mean, opposite Robert De Niro in Heat. She's when they have a heavy hitter, they're like, hey, bring in Amy Brennan and do it.
Oh yeah, heavy hitters. I mean, I kind of feel like Stallone kind of gets short shrift for the last few years, but I mean, the public has a short memory, and they tend to forget this is an Oscar-winning screenwriter.
Watch out for Tulsa King.
Watch out. Yeah, well, Taylor Sheridan. Taylor Sheridan. Like I told other people too, I really don't think Taylor Sheridan sleeps. He's got 6 shows in some kind of stage of production on Paramount. Like
he can't be one guy, right?
No. I mean, yeah, and I've talked to other people about that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like at a certain point, like in the 80s, I know there's a lot of cocaine involved with Stephen King, where it was like 4 books a year, and after a while, you're like, he's
yeah,
got
that
to
was
have
like,
a team of weasel editors just completely working on stuff all the
oh yeah,
time.
when my kids and I we watch a lot of bad movies for fun. That's one of our hobbies. And when we watch movies from the 80s, we have a thing, and we got it from Frank Zappa. But it's one of our comments when you see particular things go on, it's like, cocaine decisions. That was a cocaine decision. What that was.
Oh,
The
Zappa, man.
entire film Cobra was a cocaine decision. Like, staying alive, the entire film was a cocaine.
Yeah, oh God. Oh, that was on a few months
There
ago,
are
and I was just like,
that
why?
just
Someone said yes to this, but what? It's a sequel to
they
Saturday
just
Night Fever, so
they just reek of cocaine. Yeah.
and this is the project I kind of know. I'm gonna go into this a little bit that I did see all the way through, and I did enjoy. Disturbed me, and also really educated me on just human nature. And so I'll just ask, well, working on The Devil You Know, did it bother you that the people that you ignored actually said that they ignored all the warning signs in the development or descent of Pazuzu Algarad?
Oh yeah, and that's really part of the system. It's not just so much, and it's the way, and not to use the system as a word as a overall, but it's different failures. And Pazuzu Algarad is part of what my work has been on, and I've done a lot of it's been social justice, our journalism and stuff like that. But one thing my wife and I, Carissa and I, have focused on is this idea of crumbling infrastructure here, and that's a problem. Okay, and you think of crumbling bridges, you think of crumbling infrastructure to be things like roads, power grids in Texas, things of that nature. What crumbling infrastructure really is our basic systems falling apart, right? And that includes that environmental racism. Our film Life in the Sacrifice Zone, which we'll get to, is about that. And that is about a coal plant, the biggest coal plant in the East Coast left, coal burning plant. And then down to things like what happened with Pazuzu Algarad, which shows you a breakdown of everything from child protective services, because there's no reason that dude should have been with his mother. There's zero reasons. That's where this problem starts. And there were reports to CPS, to the school system, which is overburdened. The school he was in is one of the largest in the county, and is a large suburban school, which is a product of white flight. And one of the issues that come along with that, while you do have high achieving students in these schools, the marginalized and the marginal students get left behind. And often the resources are put towards the kids that are doing well. And that happened, and he's going to school in the 90s, and that happened, and he just slipped through the cracks. And then part of it is willful. I mean, this dude made decisions too,
Right.
Lead to that.
No. I mean, we're all kind of responsible for
Absolutely.
our life choices, and this is just a total, and I know you've heard this a million times, a total old reference that when anybody goes downhill like that, and you talk about school system and you talk about influence, and it's just this become the standard when you make an analogy is the ratio of students to teacher, but also the attention and the focus and for lack of a better word, like the nurturing. People always say, what if that art teacher teaching Hitler would have just gone up behind him and he's painting it at his easel when he's a kid and said, "Good job, son," and then moved on to the next kid. Just that, that nurturing, that craving, that acceptance.
Absolutely. But as kind of applied, there's the other person that goes, man, and there are people who are artists go, wow, if Hitler just didn't suck so bad.
I mean, there's that too. I mean,
he could have been a better artist, but no, I agree. And the thing that happened with a guy like Pazuzu Algarad is that once they start going off the rails, now a lot of that is willful. A lot of that has to do with family, generational trauma. There's some things going on there that include that, as well as drug addiction, just basic addiction issues. Because once the addiction sets in, and that's really where this thing starts to go sideways, there are psychopaths, and there's no question this dude's bonkers, but and drew other people. It's a shit magnet, drew other people to him that were out of their fucking mind too. But You know, it
Yeah.
would no question. But this, and then it goes down and continue breakdown in systems, though they don't victimize Pazuzu. They have those breakdowns that help him, they help him function. Right, the mental health system that allows him to get a check from the state for what is nominally a mental health issue, which is I get anxious when I go out, but that's not true because we had people, you know, all over town who knew the guy and saw him out, so he didn't have agoraphobia. That's
No,
nonsense.
and it
But he
made
was
like
able
I,
to con,
go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but they were able to con authorities into giving them the drugs, you know.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, one of the through lines, like I was saying when I watched the documentary, was just it. It made me uncomfortable because it made me look at myself and kind of say, God, there's been people in my life where it's like, if I had just taken an extra 30, 40 seconds to say hello or hey man, how's it going? People I've worked with at different offices in different states and whatnot. And it's like you hear later, 5 years later, they held up a liquor store or got involved with a shootout or a high-speed car chase, and you just think like that it's just we're so laser focused on our rightfully so, on ourselves, on our families, on our jobs and our day to day, but it's so easy for just to take the couple minutes just to be like, hey man, I've seen you like 3 days here hanging out, like, is everything okay, are you good, like, but we just, I don't know if it's a societal thing or
Well,
we're taught that way.
yeah, and now once in this particular case too, you have some systems breaking down that were actually built to protect us from people like Pazuzu.
Right.
All right. And because Pazuzu Algarad is also killing animals as a kid, displaying them outside of his house. That's where what you're talking about comes in, because then his neighbors see, I didn't see that.
Oh yeah,
And
it's all this, like that crazy kid.
yeah, and this guy, remember, this guy lives in the burbs. We're not talking about somebody living in the projects. We're not talking about somebody even living in rural poverty. We're talking about somebody living next door to McMansions, right? Like these stapled together things, that monstrosities that people live in nowadays out in the burb. And that's what we're talking about. So this is a kid who's middle class. He's not poor. He's not starving. There's not food insecurity and there's not housing insecurity at all. That was never an issue. And so the only insecurity he has when he couldn't get something sacrificed or he couldn't get drugged. But what happens with the other breakdown of those systems, though, that again is crumbling infrastructure, is what happened with the police in this. Now, one thing that didn't make it into the doc, I didn't direct that documentary. There's a young woman named Patricia Gillespie that did that, and I just hosted it, was a storyteller, and Carissa and I done the initial research and digging into the guy. But what we found actually is most disturbing. It's disturbing that this guy was able to kill 3 people that we know of, or can prove, and bury him in the backyard. The other thing, though, is that there's another breakdown of systems begins. It's not just him and the mental health, because we don't have it here in North Carolina. They did away with most of our mental health system as far as the hospitals and things like that, at least 30 years ago, and then it started chipping away at it. And into 2010, we had this Republican wave, and the Republicans did away with the last of it. And because as a response to Obamacare, or what they saw as the threat from Obamacare. So we don't have a lot of it. So then the next thing that fails, though, is the court system here. And he shoots a young African-American man in the back of the head with a rifle, blames it on another kid, who then takes the rap for it because Pazuzu tells him he's going to kill his mom if he doesn't. And then Pazuzu is in and out of jail, but tried and done as an accessory. No one, partially because of institutional racism, because it's a black kid. It's a black blind person. They shot him in the back of the head down near the river. Okay. And they were pretending that they were down there with him. He thought they had given him drugs. They had done stuff. And then, though, what they claimed it was an accident, that they accidentally did it. So what they ended up with was the one guy got a couple of years in jail that actually claimed although he didn't pull the trigger, and Pazuzu spent time served and went home. And that's the first homicide. And then what happened was, in the community, as far as the people who knew who that was and everything, that's when the legend starts to get out that he can do whatever he wants. Oh, that was my dog.
No, it wasn't.
I was like, that's a magic door.
That was my dog.
But yeah, and then to piggyback on what you were saying, it's just to go back earlier, just the people that were around him were the enablers. And to me, it was like, hearing the latter day in the documentary testimonials of being like, oh yeah, I told him this was fucked up and we shouldn't be doing this and blah blah blah, but he just had this power over me, like, and that just speaks to the mental
Yeah.
condition and the state of mind of those enablers, where it's just like, at what point, like, does killing somebody make you want to stay around more? Like, the guy's getting all tatted up on the face and doing crazy stuff, and like he's going out of jail but coming out of jail, and it's just like, oh well, he thinks he's this immortal Satanist, and it's like, even if I just like knew a guy who knew a guy, I'd be like, oh, but we don't do
Boredom's a
it.
real thing, man. Boredom's a real thing, and that's part of it. You had an area here. We have a city that was built on, like, we call it Camel City. It was built on Camel cigarettes and Hanes brands. In fact, we have several iconic brands that come out of the city. Okay, now it's a small city. It's a mid-sized city. Your Ann Arbor, Michigan, your place like that. Before, though, it was the largest city in the Southeast. Before Atlanta was a big metropolis. Before Charlotte, North Carolina, it was Winston-Salem. And you have Camel cigarettes. So you got RJR brand comes out of here. Hanes brand comes out of here, which are two major. Hanes brands still one of the major manufacturers on the planet, although they don't manufacture them here. Their clothing. Thomasville Furniture, which was a major furniture supplier across the United States. The globalization starts here because the cargo container, the metal car, was invented by McLean Trucking here in Winston-Salem to ship tobacco. And you don't get globalization without the cargo container, because that little ubiquitous metal container is how everything moves. The Texas Pete is from here. It's manufactured. Ironically, too, people don't understand Texas Pete is kosher. And the Garner family, who started making Texas Pete here, they just called it Texas Pete because that sounded hot. It was, and they're a Jewish family here in Winston-Salem. They've been here. And Krispy Kreme Donuts was another major. My wife used to work for their marketing department, but it was another major brand that was started here, and that was started here down in Old Salem in a small donut shop. The recipe comes from down near New Orleans, but the company was started here and ran here forever. So
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like, if people talk about the area, invariably Winston-Salem comes up, and then it's like people are always surprised, like you said, all the different brands, all the different companies, and it's just a conversation because just America in general. I'm from Ohio, I'm from Kent, Ohio, and so much has come from that area that no longer, I mean, you think about Akron and you think about tires, but no one really thinks about that anymore. It's just the we're just an internet society now. People don't really go to the big city like Cleveland or Columbus, like, oh, I better get up and put on my suit and tie and go to my office. It's just a different world now.
And with the rise of those brands, though, what I was saying, I'll bottle the ends on that, was that during the expansion of NAFTA, okay, during the in the mid 1980s and 90s, first thing, it was corporate raiders. There's a famous film about it, actually, called Barbarians at the Gate with James.
Yeah.
And that actually was about here. And they came in. The big corporate raiders come in and take over RJR Tobacco with funny money, with money they've created through junk bonds. And they buy it. And this goes back and forth for several years, becomes a big thing. But after that, though, what happened was job losses, though. And so you got a city like Winston-Salem at the time, where I don't care if you're white, black, whatever, you could go to Reynolds Tobacco Company, Hanes Hosiery, or Thomasville Furniture, and you could, without a college education, straight out of high school, raise a family, have a 2-car garage, have a bass boat, and send 2 kids to college, and then have retirement. All of that went away in a generation in the 80s. Poof, gone.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So what that left here in the 90s, and these are really the second generation of the jobless, and where all of that stuff went away, where this is where everybody is on top. Pazuzu and his crowd grow up when we're on the bottom, where we're absolutely, the downtown was so dangerous when Angel, our pal, and I went to school here, and downtown is now exactly it looks like Palo Alto. And in fact, it's a little shinier. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. We are booming in biotech and nanotech technology. We have a research park, and the Wake Forest University and Bowman Gray Medical School is huge. We've become a college town from an industrial town. But then what happens is, the people without those educations that can't do those jobs get left behind in these situations. And that's happening all over. Those little mid-sized cities with dope breweries. We have 7 breweries, and we have great restaurants, and we have scooters, and we have biotech. And unfortunately, everybody can't work in that industry. And so you have, and that happened. And so what you have during the 90s when Pazuzu and these guys are growing up is massive amounts of joblessness. Downtown was so dangerous that they told you from School of the Arts when you came here, if you went downtown, take a friend and let somebody know you left before you went. And they weren't kidding.
They just assume that there's a 90% chance you're going to get approached or something.
Yeah, it's going to be, it could be bad. So, and it was a high murder rate here, you know, while we're in school and it's no longer there. There was a low income housing project, was not adjacent to, but next to our school where we could hear, you know, this is the peak of the crack epidemic. So we're going to college there, you know, and you're hearing pop, 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 you know, and now you hear the guns going off, you know. So it was a very different place then when they were growing up, and that kind of been left there. The generation here now is very different, you know, it's different opportunities.
Oh, I remember about 20 years ago, before they revitalized their downtown, I made a movie on the outskirts of Detroit, and one night a couple of us were just looking to kill time and go into the city, and we got stopped by a group of guys. They were just like, "Man, don't come down here. They will it'll be a rob you, and they will probably stab you. They're like, go back to the tourist area where it's well lit." Like, okay, like, yeah, okay, go. So it's like,
I was making a short film with some guys in Raleigh, and these are guys from School of the Arts. This is the kind of thing we used to do. So we're in Raleigh making a short film about a homeless guy. We wrote it. Some of the guys that are in it, what the guy directing the film now edits, he got an Emmy nomination for editing the pilot of The Mandalorian. And stuff like that. So it's guys that one day we're gonna do some work, but right now we're underneath this bridge downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, where there's literal piles of human shit and like drugs, like, you know, like people's pill bottles, because the actual mental hospital was close by. So a lot of the homeless were mental patients. And then so we're working down in there, and then we started to get approached near the end of the day, and I'm producing at this point, and we got the rate. I'm like, Jeff, I think it's time. We need to start, you know, let's move it along. And the director wants to get us one more thing, and we're down there, one more thing. And we had a small video camera, as well as a big, we're shooting with a big movie camera. We had a small video camera with us. This isn't like 95. And we had a small video camera with us. We had shot some B-roll with for the inserts for this thing. And all of a sudden, what we perceived as homeless people, what they are really was, some were homeless, some were Mexican migrant workers, start walking down the train tracks toward us. And they're coming around and they're near us. And they're starting to kind of circle. And we're like, Jeff, let's wrap it up, buddy. And we're loading gear. Well, sure enough, as they start getting closer and closer and gathering thing, one of them grabs the camera and takes off. Right, the video camera, and it's Jeff's camera, so he takes off after the guy through the shot, and so we all take off after the guy. Get him, you know, because we've been, you know, go, and me and this guy Andrew Buchanan, who now works at Duke University, he does all their video for their hospital and their, you know, all the stuff at the university. We're booking it down the train track after this guy. This guy turns around and he puts his hand in. He's got the camera. One, he puts his hand in his pants, and he comes out with a knife, and we're all like, knife, run away, and turn around. And all of us are like, we literally met our buddies as they're running this way and we're running the other way, going, no, fuck this, you know, let him have it. It's his camera now.
Yeah, you can always get another camera. Oh my God.
Now the cops did get him. It's funny. We called it in and the police got him, and they brought him to us and let us look at him, and it got the camera back. But it was, you know, yeah, man, when you go, you have to, but you got to go shoot in these places where there's truth, man. It's going to be dangerous. You know, I went to Detroit. I think the last time, I love Detroit. I think the last time I was in Detroit, I want to say it was like 2009. I was touring around with this funk band, and I was working for a magazine. I was the political editor for a magazine called Skunk Magazine. It's about weed and whatnot. And I didn't really write about weed. I wrote about music and politics. But it was off political years, 2009. So I'm riding around with I'm driving the van for this funk band all over the country, you know, out of Asheville, North Carolina. Your Mama's Big Fat Booty Band was the name of the band. They still. And but we're doing all shows everywhere. And their road manager and I always would go catch baseball games. That's our thing. It's every city we came to a major city, we're going to go watch a Major League Baseball game because it was during summertime. And we caught the Lions. The stadium was fairly new, you know, although around it looked like a war zone. And I understand some of that was, construction, but there was literally a bar with the bar down, but it was like a sports bar that was open. This was like a block and a half from the stadium, and the top of the building was being demolished and had a backhoe stuck in it where they were pulling out the top floor of it over top of the bar, and the bar was still open running on game night.
Jesus.
And I love that stadium, man. I love that.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite baseball spots in the country is that statue of Ty Cobb that's there. And I get it. He was kind of a prick, but there's a statue of Ty Cobb at that stadium at the Vegas Stadium. It's a bronze statue. And if you go there, when the sun goes down, it's designed during baseball season that the sun goes down over Ty Cobb's shoulder. And it's incredible looking. I got several pictures of it, but I love that stadium. Man.
It's nice, man. I do want to kind of give you some time to because I didn't get a chance to dig into these too much. If you could kind of speak about life in the sacrifice zone and then what's going on with Hometown America.
Absolutely. Life in the Sacrifice Zone's a film came out. Well, COVID kind of, as it did everybody, was disruptive on that project. We worked on it for 5 years. And what it's about is the and we're working on making it available widely. It did festivals and stuff like that. But again, it was festivals. It was when things were virtual because of the pandemic. We did get to do a screening at River Run Film Festival, which is here, International Film Festival. It's here in Winston-Salem, and it was fun though because I always wanted to have a drive-in movie, and we got to screen as a drive-in. And I said, but I always kind of plan my drive-in screening and have crashing cars in it and maybe some boobs and stuff. None of that. But I was able to get a drive-in screen. But what it's about is there's a community close by here. It's about 12 nautical miles, but it's more rural. And it's an African-American community that is remaining over, there's a big lake there that actually used to be their community. It was called Little Egypt. Okay. And in the 1960s, using shell companies and not telling anyone what we're doing, Duke Energy, which is one of the biggest energy companies on the planet, they came in and secretly started buying property around there from African-American farmers. And this little community, Egypt, is now a lake called Blues Lake. Okay. And so around it, though, still are this African-American community in the little small town of Walnut Cove, which partially because of segregation and things that had happened during that time, is the only part of that county, Stokes County, that's heavily populated by African-Americans. So there's a lot of political tension in the town with that and the white Republic, because it's an extremely Republican county. But with Duke Energy there, it's the biggest coal plant on the East Coast. 22%, excuse me, to be absolutely accurate, 22% of the yearly emissions that come from North Carolina as a state come from that single plant. Whoa. And it has millions of gallons of coal ash. And I don't know if you know what that is, but that's the detritus that's left over when they burn coal to make power. Oh, okay. It's piled up in these giant lagoons around there, and then but there's no liners underneath it, so the leach down into the water table, so everyone's water became contaminated with things like, and the lake was contaminated. So, but this small community of African Americans there, they have been bound together since the 1950s. Okay, and partially because there's this individual who kind of tied them all together. He's an interesting fellow. They refused to give up, and they just kept fighting until they forced Duke Energy into the largest coal ash cleanup in United States history. They won in court, just crushed them, and it wasn't. And at the same time, we're able to kind of start lifting their community back up. So it's a hopeful story. It's one where the good guys sort of win, even though that's great. Even though the truth is that community will always be polluted for thousands of years because there's no way to mitigate that. So they're still having to bring in bottled water to them. They're still having to pipe water into them above ground to get them, potable water. Just take a bath, just to drink. So, but and that's the film that we did. And then my wife and I are doing a documentary series right now called an unscripted series called Hometown America. And it started as a crime series, and it's morphed into a series about generational trauma and the opioid crisis, and how certain areas of America, particularly Appalachia, particularly small towns. Believe it or not, the most dangerous place in America to live is a small town. And a small town near here is called Mount Airy, and that's where our story takes place. And you, of course, have seen the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. Well, Mount Airy is Andy Griffith's hometown, and that is Mayberry. It's literally Mayberry. It's also been the #2 place in America to die of a drug overdose. Last week in Mount Airy, 4 people died of drug overdose. So what we're doing is exploring that through the lens of this woman who is now doing harm reduction. She's got a group called Birches, who is going into trailer parks and administering Narcan and testing strips. I'm going out with them tomorrow to test drugs. But the way she got there though was her daughter was murdered with a hot shot. She had gotten involved with local organized crime and she was an addict. But it turns out that Wendy was an addict too. She was a nurse who became an addict due to being prescribed opioids. Her mother was an addict who died of a drug overdose. So there's a generational, tie here that goes on that's much deeper. And then part of the resonance of this is it takes place in Mayberry. This is America's hometown. Literally.
I know, but to talk about what we talked about earlier and bring it back is just me coming from like a small sort of town as well. It's just, I know that that's just more likely for people to be laser focused and just put blinders on, and they're just like, oh, that's just the kid down the street, he's an oddball and whatever, and just brush it off. And that's where the kids are running meth labs out of their grandma's basement and stuff.
Well, in Mount Airy is unique, and not unique, unfortunately, in the Appalachians, though, in that what happened when NAFTA came and the jobs went away, they lost 30,000 jobs in a town that is a population of 10,000. Over 30,000 jobs were lost in a 5-year period in the 1990s. And what happened was you had 2 regional hospitals that were pumping opiates into the system. And then you had what moved in were these carport companies that do carports. Yeah, they're fronts for Mexican drug cartels. So then you had heroin on the streets, trafficking, and everything just really started to spiral out of control. So because a small town is much easier to corrupt than a large city is, believe it or not.
But I gotta hand it to you.
You have pockets of corruption in a large city, much like you see in Baltimore. Okay, when you look at Baltimore, those pockets of corruption, being at the mayor's office or being at the police officers on the street with the gun squad, are pockets of corruption that are not circling one. They're not touching each other. Right. They're operating on their own. The problem in a small town is that all the corruption touches one another. It's real easy to get a handle on the whole place. And it's a much deeper corruption, and it's much more insidious, far harder to burn out and to expose.
And also in a small town, everybody kind of knows everybody, and somebody's cousin is a sheriff's deputy and somebody's brother is on the city council, and it's just all connected, and they kind of turn a blind eye. But as we're kind of running down on time here, I did want to touch on one more topic here. We got about 6 minutes left. So I wanted to ask you, so then other than social media, how has investigative journalism, what you're doing, and fact checking and getting interview releases changed in the last 10 to 20 years with everybody worried about cell phones and things like that, and getting their image and the rights and stuff like that? I get a feeling like it's really changed in the last 10 to 20 years.
It has and it hasn't. Okay. People are more aware of their image. But the truth is, partner, okay, I always use this example. And this is when I work with young people, because we do a lot of mentoring with kids from School of the Arts still. And my wife and I do it. We teach kids all the time. We're always bringing in, interns. And one thing I teach my interns, when it's time to send them out, we go to these big events. We did a few months ago, we went to this big event and have to get them around to get them to sign releases. And this is even scarier because this releases of people's children, because this event has children playing on playground equipment. And my PA is real nervous. I don't know, man. And I'm like, wait, always remember this. Have you ever seen the television show Cops? Okay. How many faces are blurred out?
Quite a bit.
But many aren't. And those people signed a release.
Yeah.
People like to be on television still. I don't care. If they think there's a camera involved, it's much easier than it is if I'm doing a print story. It's so much easier if I've got a camera involved. Let me sign.
Or you got a guy right next to you holding the camera, and you've got the release form, and you're like, oh yeah, we're about to shoot, and they're like, oh shoot, oh okay, yeah.
I mean, but it really is. I use the cops analogy all the time because you just got drug out of your trailer. You don't have a shirt on. The cops tune you up. You're in the back of the car. A PA puts it in front of you. You go, oh sure, I'll do that. And it happened.
But to me, the longest running joke about Cops, and I don't care what anybody says, is the most in shape guy on the crew is the camera guy, because they're like, the cops are running, but the camera guy is right behind the perp, and like you just see the feet going like this. It's just like the dude is up and over the fence, and the camera guy's like right there, and they look back, and the cops are just like, go, just go.
The camera guy, they must have been incredibly fit,
Yeah,
It's
they
like
got like some 20-year-old, former like triathlete,
or it's
holding
like,
the camera, and the cops are just like, just go, just get the footage, get the
or
shot.
like the famous story about our mutual friend Angel, who was shooting a documentary in Puerto Rico during a riot, and he was standing, according to the stories, the legendary stories, he's on top of a car swinging a boom pole around his head, trying to clear a hole around himself in the riot crowd.
Jesus. The things we do, man. The things we do.
If you're doing it right, it's either uncomfortable or a little bit dangerous. Yeah.
So wrap it up here real quick. I know it goes fast, but I know what you've got this Hometown America coming out, so that's the next thing. And okay, well, just as a time filler is really fun, real quick. If you had to pick your favorite comedy group of people, would it be Monty Python? Would it be the core people from Mel Brooks's movies from the 70s, or you got original 75 to 1980 Saturday Night Live cast?
Okay,
no wrong answer.
Out of those choices, I'm taking the Brooks crowd.
Well, plus they've got people coming and going too. But
now my heart, though, my favorite comedy troupe of all is still Kids in the Hall.
And yeah, did you see the new season?
Absolutely. Anybody, if you just want to be in a good mood watching disturbing stuff.
Even just the Pincher guy. When I saw that guy, I'm like, that just made my day.
But Dave's solo as the DJ
God.
That is one of the best things.
Brand New Key, and it's like that's the only record he's got.
But that performance is incredible.
Yeah, because he's all jazzed up and like, coming back with Melanie and Brand New Key, and he plays it as soon as the needle drops. He's just.
Here we go. Yeah. It's just genius. I think it's that was Bruce McCullough or Dave. I can't remember.
Oh God, those guys are still great.
But I'll take Mel Brooks over all those other people anytime. Mel Brooks is a punk rocker, man. Mel Brooks was all about anarchy.
He's got History of the World Part 2 coming out on Hulu. He apparently he saw what Steve Martin was able to do with Only Murders in the Building,
which is awesome too. I love that
show. Yeah, and he said, as a 95-year-old man, why am I going to take this script and shop it to studios that tell me you're too old and we'll never get this in a theater or as many theaters, whereas streaming I can get to millions. Yep. And just bring in my own writer's room and comedians I want to work with. So real quick, man, I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and I wanted to give you a minute or so here to kind of plug your social media. I know you've got YouTube, you've got a website, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, on YouTube we have some mini docs up and videos up at Camel Seed Dispatch Crew, which is the channel we have there. And otherwise, we're just plugging away, and you can see the Devil You Know on Hulu right now.
That's so
and if
great.
You don't have Hulu, you can buy it on Amazon, from what I understand. If you want to put yourself through it.
I'm sorry we didn't really get to riff on our favorite whiskeys and Wild Turkey and all that stuff, but time doesn't fly.
I hope the hostage situation works out for you.
Oh yeah.
The setup there looks a little. I keep waiting for you.
Like I said, this is just a mattress with a sheet on it because the lighting works really well. But like I normally film it in my living room, but yeah, man, you can't fight Mother Nature with the natural lighting. So
Eric Lawson,
$1 million unmarked sequential bills.
The Proof of Life podcast.
Oh God, that'd be great. All right, Chad. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I'm glad it worked out, and best of luck with everything, man. You're hitting home runs, man.
Sorry, I was too hard to get a hold of.
Dude, it was great. Thank you so much, man. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.